Right, well, here we are. Live once again. It's match day. We're at the county ground. It's Swindon Town versus Harrogate, and you're with the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, live from the Legends Lounge. And I'm delighted today because we've got a super lineup of panellists. Andrew Halls is going to be joining us shortly, doing his star guest turn. I've got Ellis. How are we, Ellis?
Yeah, wonderful as always. Glad to be here.
Goal hungry, points hungry.
Oh, indeed, always. 3-0, 3-1.
We've been busy in the transfer market, the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, as you know, and our recent acquisition is making his third appearance of his Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge career is Adam, making his first live show, however. It should be. So your big live debut, how are the nerves, Adam?
I'm fine. I'm ready to moan at everything, as I always do. So we'll
got to do it in front of an audience, though. Look at them all. Look, they're all staring you down.
Oh,
You've got Dean McMacken over there. He's having a little look out the corner of his eye just to unseat your confidence.
I'm not that famous just yet, don't you worry.
And whilst there are rumours of Swindon Town Football Club in the market for free agent centre backs, well, the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge has stayed in the market this week, and I'm delighted to confirm that making his not only his live debut, but his show debut is another new acquisition. We've got Darren. How are we, Darren?
Very well, thank you, Mark. How are you?
Very well.
Good,
very
good.
well. So, I thought no better place than to start than to we got to the ground early today, and we'd arranged a little pre-game handshake with a few of the players, none other than a certain Charlie Austin. And Darren, you're a really interesting person to talk about in relation to Charlie, because you are literally childhood friends.
We are, yeah. We go back from sort of late primary school years. He was a couple of years below me, but we've been mates for probably 25 years.
So Charlie's he's a really, really, really good friend of our show. I think regular listeners will know that Charlie and my path crossed initially when he first signed for the club. Like literally, he'd been through the door 2 or 3 days, and Charlie had the same sort of status that, say, Harry Parsons has got at our club now. It would be argued at the time. For those of you that were old enough to sort of recall supporting the club back then, and you know what the stature of the squad was back then, Charlie was this young upstart who plucked from Poole Town and scored a lot of goals in non-league, but so had Charlie Griffin. So it was, we were a little bit like, well, he could strike, he might not. We don't know. We haven't got a brilliant record bringing people up from non-leagues and setting the world alight. But I remember, Darren, when we spoke off air just now, and I said that the thing that struck me about Charlie almost immediately was that he had this confidence with a hint of arrogance. And back in my 4-4-2 days, I was very, very lucky to meet Rio Ferdinand. And I said to Rio Ferdinand, what does it take? Because he was just a kid from Peckham as well. I was gobsmacked how normal Rio was. And I said, how do you end up being a kid from Peckham, as well as obviously you've got footballing talent, but there are a lot of very talented footballers that grow up, particularly in and around the London area where there's such a concentration of people. How do you get all the way through to Man United and England and wearing a captain's armband at an elite level? And he said to me, he goes, Hadders, confidence with a hint of arrogance, every great player's got to have it. So a couple of years later, I met Charlie, and I'd always remembered that quote. And any time I'd met a very talented footballer, I always look, do I ever see that confidence with a hint of arrogance? As in, is that a key ingredient? Cut a long story short, Charlie had it, and he had it in spades. And it only took him a couple of weeks, Darren, didn't it? And he was a waiter boy.
Yeah, so I remember when he signed for Swindon, when he had the trial for Swindon, he rang me up on a Sunday afternoon and said, Daz, they've given me a trial. Danny Wilson's been on the phone. They want me to go in for, I think it was a 5-day trial. And there was a reserve game against Swansea. And I was obviously buzzing at the time. But I remember getting off the phone and saying to my wife, it's great, but I can't see us signing him. It's just too much of a step up, Wessex League to League One at a time. And so this was back in August or September, I think. I went on holiday to Egypt, and I got a text message from a mate of mine, another mutual friend of mine and Charlie, and he basically played this reserve game at Swansea. I think he scored. And then, from there, really, he never looked back. Got offered the contract. Within 3 or 4 weeks, he's made his first team debut away at Norwich, and then obviously his full debut at Carlisle and got the goal.
And what a beautiful goal that was as well. I mean, the thing about that goal, and it's become a trademark of Charlie's career, Darren, isn't it? Is his ability, like touch, his ability to sort of get the ball under control, put it in a place where he can get a shot off, but not just a shot, but a shot with like accuracy and venom. So it's the movement, the touch, and the finish. That's Charlie Austin in a nutshell, isn't it? It's what he does.
Yeah. So I mean, as kids, we would go onto the town pitch at Hungerford when we shouldn't have been on there, but after school we'd go up there and we'd be kicking footballs around. But he would spend hours and hours just shooting practice or kick target practice, that sort of thing. I think his non-league days, he was playing men's football at 15 years old for Kidbury Rangers, and I think that aspect of him playing at that level at such a young age, he learned a lot in a very short space of time. And his ability to gamble on defenders' mistakes, which, to be honest, a lot of professional footballers don't do enough of. He obviously, defenders in non-league make mistakes on a sort of game basis, don't they? They do it all the time. So he had that ability to gamble on mistakes, get in the right place at the right time, and he's just a natural goal scorer. I don't think there's any other way to describe it. You can't teach what he does. It is pure nature to him. He's just born with a gift. And luckily, he's actually cracked it through his career.
And again, like we talked off air, Darren, again, from your perspective, as someone that's kind of grown up with him, there were some sections of the town supporter base that have memories of shall we just say, like Charlie's misdemeanours away from the club.
Yeah.
And people get very sanctimonious, don't they, in relation to, young men and misbehaving. But we've got to remember that when Charlie was here, like, he was a very, very, very young lad, and the Charlie that we've got now, he's a different beast. And obviously, you've seen that inside journey. Like, how would you compare the Charlie from back then to the Charlie that you've got now? How would you go about describing that transition?
I think the Charlie back then was literally living a lot of young lads' dreams at the time. To come from non-league at 19, 20 years old, to then play for his local club. He obviously, his girlfriend then, but his wife now, is a Swindon girl. So they were well known in the town and throughout the area even before he signed for Swindon. And I think that didn't help him initially. Back then he liked to drink, as young lads do, like going out on a Saturday night. And it's well documented some of the problems that he had, in town and stuff like that. But he has grown and matured into as I say, he's a father now. He's just a proper mature man, and that's come through into his football, into his game now, because he's a leader on the pitch, he's a leader in the dressing room, and he wants to be that role model for the younger lads. He's shown his maturity since he's come back here in abundance. I think we can see on the pitch how he talks to the younger lads. Even from a striker, he's all over the pitch, giving people advice, telling them to play. I think, was it the second goal at Sutton, or the first goal at Sutton, I think. You can hear him shouting, like, "Wake, make the run." And it's stuff like that. You can't teach that. Again, that comes from experience, playing at higher level, playing with better players, and having good quality coaching around you.
Well, we'll talk about the transfer saga, and we've got our own sort of respective views on that, Darren, which I'm sure the listeners will find interesting, and we'll try our best not to betray any confidences in that. But coming back to you, Adam, and you, Ellis, you literally were like kids when Charlie was in, like really young kids, but yet you both got like stunning memories. And it's fair to say your love for the football club has been fed significantly by Charlie Austin's role at Swindon Town, like, and the myth of Charlie Austin. So whereas Darren and I have got almost like adult memories of Charlie, your frame of reference is kind of different, because you've sort of grown up with the Charlie Austin. We were already grown up.
Yeah.
Ellis, you go first. What was when Charlie first was sort of, when it was mooted? Go back 2 years, in fact, when the rumours first started that Charlie might come back. What did it mean to you? I guess go in a slightly different way. What's your earliest memories of Charlie?
Yeah.
And then what did it mean to you when it started getting kind of flagged that he might be coming back?
Yeah. So my first ever season coming as a little kid, I can't remember how old it was, but 4 or 5 years old probably. And you could probably all remember your first season, and you can pick out players. And you know, as a young kid, your favourite player is going to be the star player, the player that's banging in goals, just the exciting player. And all I remember from sort of my first season and Swindon as a whole, when I started watching, was Charlie Austin. Now, can I remember individual moments? No, but I just remember Charlie Austin being my favourite player. He was like, you know, this sort of god, and yeah,
Talisman.
yeah.
Because that's funny, isn't it? Because even at a very young age, he kind of had that about him. But and yet that's really quite something when you think about it, because he's in a team with players like Gordon Greer, John Douglas, John Paul McGovern, Billy Painter. These are huge. Dave Lucas. These are huge characters.
Yeah.
Big personalities. But Charlie, the thing I tell you, the memory that I have that kind of encapsulates what it is I'm trying to say. If you remember the celebrations after the Charlton playoff game, and how Charlie was just orchestrating all of that. Bare chested, he'd thrown his shirt into the crowd. It was scarves up. He was like, all the merch was raining down on the pitch, and he was leading all of that. If you think back to some of those pictures, you don't actually see many post-match snaps of anyone but Charlie. There's not many snaps of Goldie. Well, obviously he got the red, so he's probably keeping his head down. But you know, Dave Lucas, all the boys I'm talking about, Cy Ferry, all those guys, they're all in the background, and Charlie's the one that's orchestrating it all. So it's fair to say he had some front at a young age. So that the idea of him being a talisman for you, Ellis, I think is definitely believable. But I mean, Adam, what from your perspective, earliest memory of Charlie?
Well, as sorry, I need to wipe the whistle. As I said on the first show that I did, I wasn't fortunate to get into football at a young age. I was sort of like my household. We never really was into going and watching football. I think I come down from my dad. And then when it was me, my mum, and my stepdad, I started getting into football a bit more.
What age would that have been?
So I actually started getting properly into football when I was about 14.
14.
14.
And what are you now?
21.
21.
So I've had quite a short life when it comes to watching football live. My first memory of Charlie was watching Southampton.
Yep.
Obviously, I didn't know.
Was it the famous interview?
No, it was a little bit. Few seasons before that. No, so that was the season. That was the 2016-17 season where Southampton. Was it the season before that when Southampton got to the League Cup final against United? That was the. Yeah, I remember Charlie, and he was up front alongside like Shane Long.
So, all right. So if your first memories were Southampton, how weird must that have been for you, seeing like a lad from your hometown, sort of basically that you knew had done the business for your hometown club, bossing it in the Premier League?
Yeah.
Because that would have been about the time he got in Roy Hodgson's England squad. So what must that have been like for you?
Yeah, because as a kid, it was still quite difficult to actually get the money to watch Premier League consistently, and it was a bit of a travel. So I'm always trying to get someone a bit older than me that could drive to sort of like take me down there and we go and watch a game together. With Charlie, I started watching Swindon after that first season at Southampton. I went to the final against United when they lost, and then I think my mate started dragging me down to watch Swindon, and he was sort of saying, well, one of my mates had a season ticket, and he was like, oh yeah, come and join us in the Arkles. And then that's when I started getting into Swindon, and that was like I said to you, the Luke Williams season,
yeah, the way we
got relegated, and then I got the tap on the leg and started going for it. Yeah. And I haven't looked back since. This has been my main club. So with Charlie, I knew about the history. I'd obviously looked at the history of the club as I was getting more and more involved with Swindon, and I knew that Charlie had played here before, especially when I started watching Southampton. I knew he played here before. Amazing. So when the rumour mill started coming up about him coming back, my first thought was he'll absolutely smash this league. He would absolutely rip it apart, because like what Darren was saying about that goal scoring ability, he's just he's a proper striker. He's an old school English striker. You put that ball in the box, as long as he gets a touch on it, you can bet 99% of the time it's going in the back of the net. And
let's be honest, like obviously so far so good in that respect. You know, he's done exactly. I think if you had a best case, middle case, worst case scenario, and certainly I did, he's up there with my best case scenario. We've had a couple of tweets in relation to why we're talking about Charlie so much today. Well, here's looking at you, Steve Terrell. There's a very good reason for that. Delighted to say, for those of you that are tuning in a little bit later, we're joined by show debutante Darren Scott, who's joining us today. If you're not following him, make sure you do. Darren is a childhood friend of Charlie, and both Darren and I have known Charlie a very, very long time. So we're just opening up the show by comparing some notes. So yes, Steve, very good point. We do have more players than Charlie, but it's very rare that you have a childhood friend of the current Swindon Town captain, who just so happens to have scored 4 in 6.
4 and 5, innit?
4 and 5. 4 and 5, 4 and 6. Right. God almighty. We're not a statistical bunch. So just in case anyone's wondering why we've got this massive Charlie Austin loving going on today, it's because we are breaking in a new debutant, and what better way to do it than to share the common ground. So Louis joined us as well, legally Swin. How are we, Louis?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So we won't go back to earliest Charlie memories.
No.
We won't go back to early Charlie memories, but I know that you in particular, Louis, you were utterly thrilled when he came back, weren't you? So I'm going to ask you this question. Here we are. I've just said to you about my best, middle and worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Where's Charlie's return for the club so far fit in relation to your best, middle and worst case scenario?
I think he's fit in, best case scenario, because we were desperate for a striker that could score goals. We were desperate for an experienced player. We were desperate for someone who was proven at this level and above. And he fits all three, in my opinion. That game against Gillingham, we were 3-1 down, and he scored 2 goals, brought us back to 3-3. He's basically like, he's that leader in the dressing room. We need so much. We need a few more of them, really, to really bounce up into League One, obviously, and then beyond. But I think for now, he's been the perfect fit for this squad.
Yeah. So Darren, coming back to you again, literally childhood friend of Charlie, known him since he was literally a whippersnapper. So long before Paul Town, right the way back primary school stuff. Charlie now being given the full trust of Jody Morris. Before we even talk about the captain's armband, Charlie, you and I both know that Charlie had his sort of there were concerns about Charlie coming back and what his impact on this club would be. And I know that you and I have both spoken to Charlie pre and post him signing for the club about that. Those concerns kind of, fair to say, I don't want to use the word upset, but sort of annoyed him a bit, frustrated him a bit with him coming back at this stage. Would you like to sort of shed a little light on your side of what you know in that respect? Because he's returned to the club as a senior pro, and it's fair to say that he just wanted, you would hope that returning to his hometown club, there would be universal, he would just feel the warmth of universal trust, but it wasn't the case, was it, necessarily? I mean, we won't mention names.
No, there was an element of the support base, a very, very small minority, I will add, that did voice their concerns about him coming back, about having a player that, I mean, it's no secret, and he'll probably agree with it, that his goal scoring in the last year or two hasn't been as prolific as it has been. But he's never doubted his ability and his confidence coming back and making a difference to this football club. He went to Australia because it was a challenge that he wanted to embrace. It didn't work out for whatever reason.
He'd always said, hadn't he wanted to play abroad.
Yeah.
But there's abroad and there's Australia.
I mean, that's the other side of the world.
That came as a bit of a surprise to me, because it was only a couple of days before that on Talk Sport when they was asking where he wants to go. Would you sign for Wigan? And he went, no, that's too far. I live just off the M4.
He was offered contracts from local clubs, right? Not Swindon at the time, but there were other local clubs, including our fierce rivals at the A420, who offered him a contract. So there were offers, but yeah.
Let that sink in. Can you imagine Charlie Austin
would rather play in Australia
in the yellow shirt? Could you imagine? But again, fair play to him because other cult heroes have gone and done it. He wouldn't do that to us, though, would he?
Beaker,
Andrew,
Smith.
join us. Andrew Hawes is now joining the debate. Andrew, you're just coming in at the tail end of a conversation in relation to Charlie Austin. So and the reason we're talking about Charlie, Andrew, come on round, have my seat. I can't bear the gentleman in me wants you to
I'll
sit
go and
down.
grab a chair.
All right. Right, we're doing musical chairs now. We're all being really polite. So Darren is making his show debut, Andrew. Childhood friend of Charlie Austin from primary school age, which is why we're spending a little bit of time with. So we're talking about the evolution of Charlie Austin and Swindon Town Football Club, in a sense, as a way of easing Darren into Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge duties. But so we were just saying that, Charlie, we just got to the stage to talk about Charlie going off to Brisbane. And Darren was saying that obviously at the time there were other local clubs that had offered Charlie contracts, including those Herberts up the A420. So my line was, we'll just let that sink in for a minute. And if ever you needed an increase in iconic status, the fact that he turned down the contract to go and play in that disgusting shade of yellow, when other icons of this club have not necessarily, I'll say icons is a bit strong, but other very well thought of players that have represented Swindon Town have not resisted that offer. Well, there you go. That's all you need to know, right?
Another feather to the
legend cap.
Yeah, no, we'll try and sneak that in this afternoon then, definitely.
Yeah, well, we absolutely should.
All goes into the data bank.
Yeah, quite right. So, Darren, you were saying obviously he had other options, but then he's gone for Brisbane. Now, in hindsight, it clearly was a big step for the family, wasn't it? Huge step.
I think it was too big a step. With the two younger kids, I think it kind of not worked, but it was easier to settle them in. But they've got an older daughter who is currently doing her GCSEs, so she stayed back in the UK. And I think the distance, the separation was too much. And the football didn't quite go how Charlie wanted it to. I think the standard surprised him a little bit. The training and stuff like that.
I'm taking that's not in a good way.
It wasn't the level he thought it was going to be anyway. I've not watched much of the A-League, so I don't really want to speak too much about it. But from what I have seen, I can kind of understand.
A-League gets talked about very much like early days MLS, where you've got a lot of very, very fit lads, as you would imagine. Australian athletes are renowned for their outdoor lifestyle and fitness at an early age. The biggest problem that the A-League faces is it doesn't have with youth sport, there's no kind of route. You go up, you can play soccer all the way through school, but then it gets to a stage where really kind of like, budding athletes, if they're at an elite level of fitness, they get picked by the A-League, by Aussie Rules or rugby league, and to an extent cricket. Slightly different sort of level of cardio fitness required there, but I think that's a real problem that they face. So they've got their structural and organisational issues in the A-League that the MLS had early, it's fair to say.
I think the difficulty with the Australian League is the sheer size of the country. So, we're lucky in the UK that travelling distances to away games, maximum really, is a 5 or 6 hour drive. For there, you can be flying for 5 or 6 hours to go to away games, and it just doesn't happen. So, if Brisbane are playing Perth, for example, there'd be no Brisbane fans in the crowd. So there's no atmosphere. It's just difficult, and I think that kind of affects the football in a way.
The country's harder to divide up than the US. So you compare the MLS, you think about Australian living, there's an awful lot of coastal living, and there's still that enormous eastern and western frontier with not a lot going on in between. So whereas you can create your conferences and cut down that travel time in, say, the US, for example, you've got a country, a bloody huge country in Australia, comparable. It's easy to argue. But you can't just go right there and go, there's a bunch of teams in the north, they're going to play together in the east or the west, or it's not as easy as that.
I think to be fair, have not some of the Melbourne and Sydney derbies when they've actually had away fans, haven't they got?
Oh, they get huge crowds. Yeah, and obviously there's been well documented some of the violence. Actually, there was a goalkeeper assaulted, I think, at the Melbourne derby.
I remember that.
A few months ago. But getting back to Charlie, I think there was a multitude of reasons why it didn't work, and around October time, late October, early November, the decision was made that he was coming back, and him and Clem met in Brisbane when Clem was over in Australia. They met up, and it was pretty quickly decided that this is where he wanted to come back to, and Clem wanted it to happen. There were people in the club that were resisting it to begin with. The deal could and should have been done a lot quicker than it was. He wanted it signed before he flew back, so that he basically wasn't coming back to uncertainty of where he was going to be playing or what he was going to be doing. But yeah, for whatever reason, which I'm not going to discuss in too much depth here.
Yeah, it would be appropriate. Listen,
there were people resisting it.
Regular listeners to our show will know that obviously Charlie was more than delighted to help with the growth of the show up until we returned to the club. The sweet irony of that is that Charlie was a weekly columnist, kept in touch with UK football in Swindon Town through coming on and doing a little half an hour sort of stint with us every week. And it was interesting for me when Charlie contacted me. This must have been similar sort of time that you're muting Darren, saying, look, there's a chance that this is on, and it's fair to say that the amount of time it took to probably get it across the line, dragging it on, was clearly a source of frustration. But I think some of the resistance to the move as well appeared to be attached to probably finances, his age, and the model that the club is working to in terms of bringing in sort of very young, very talented players that they can polish up, hopefully push up through the league, and then sell on as they've managed to push up through the league. And to what extent would clearly a player that you would expect to carry a certain level of remuneration sort of fit into that model? That appeared to be that is the view that I drew from it. Now, I think it's interesting we're going back to some of his frustrations. I mean, I spoke openly to Charlie, having spoken to a lot of fans about how they perceive Charlie returning to the club, and we touched on this earlier. I bounced that off him directly about, are you coming back? Do you think you're going to be a leader, Charlie? Do you think you're going to be a leader? And he was like 110%. 110%. Now, for me, speaking to someone that first met him in like 09-10, as this cheeky little rascal, doing bits and bobs for me on various commercial projects like Win a Pro contract and various other things, I'd never necessarily have had him down as a leader, but it was just fascinating seeing his kind of personal sort of journey. So look, we went back to, without me to waffle on too much, we started talking about Jody Morris and how much that you think that would have meant to him, Darren. Now, obviously, having the backing of your manager, Jody came in. Andrew, you will of course remember Jody's first press conference. He was asked about Charlie, and he said I'm delighted with him. I mean, Darren, that must have meant a lot, but
yeah, I mean, the fact that I think he was given the captaincy in the Gillingham game was the first game, wasn't it? So the week before Jody came to the club. I think that was a bit of a shock to him at the time. I don't think he came back to the club expecting to be captain. But coaching and leadership never really interested him that much until he went to Australia. And obviously they have a lot of young lads in that Brisbane team. And his experience, and he was involved with some of this, organising training sessions and helping out with some of the coaching. And I remember him saying to me, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And coming back, so he won't mind me saying, but I think there is a view to coaching badges and developing into maybe a player coaching role in the offing in the next year or two. So, it's something that he's definitely built upon since he came back, and I think Jody's belief in him would probably take him to that next level of being able to do that.
So the coaching and development vacuum in Australia is probably, strangely, you played a decent role in him, ended up with a captain's armband. I mean, Andrew, you've obviously, as well as being long-standing commentator for BBC Radio Wiltshire, you've been a Swindon Town fan all your life as well. For me, it kind of felt logical that Charlie pick up the armband, but obviously at the time you had other senior pros in the building, Angus McDonald, etc., etc. Kind of, it's lovely to see Charlie with the armband, isn't it? On a very, very basic level, Andrew.
Yeah, no, it is nice. It is kind of circle completing, doesn't it? Especially what Darren's talking about, that he might be looking at something longer term with coaching. It's quite exciting news, really. But no, it's good to have him back. And even when we sort of do our interviews, the players on the record are all very kind of complimentary about it. But even once the microphone goes off, they are saying that, you know, he has been like a positive influence, kind of leadership influence. He has been sort of helpful. So you know,
and
I think on and off the pitch, it's all settled in really very well.
I think what's really exciting is I know we're fan-based media, so in effect, let's just call it as we are. We are just amateur media heads here. But the players still kind of have a little bit of a kind of media guard up around us, and rightly so, because for all they know, we're going to be flapping our jaws left, right, and centre. I like to think that we tread that line well, but I can honestly say that when the lads are, you know, we speak to them and say quite clearly, look, lads, off the record, how are you getting on with Charlie? Like, it's great. From a fan's perspective, it's wonderful seeing him from the stands. And they literally, to an individual, all of their eyes light up. I've not met a single pro at our club that I've spoken to who said, how are you getting on with Charlie? And we have to speak to all of them, obviously. We've got relationships with all of the guys in the first team. And their faces just light up. And it's like, it's tremendous. And they all say leadership, coaching, and also, crucially, he's just a great guy to have around the place. So,
if you look back throughout his career, he's done so many, VTs and video stuff with the likes of Sky. The Soccer AM, he's been on there dozens of times, done loads of bits for them. But the one thing that I remember so clearly is the drill that he did with Jimmy Bullard when he was at QPR. And you could just see from how they all were around him, how popular, at the time. And I think he's been the same, apart from Southampton, where I think there was a little bit of a falling out with Ralph Hasenhüttl towards the end of his career there. But yeah, everywhere else he's been. I mean, I wanted to ask Andrew, actually, from a media perspective and someone that interviews him, I get the impression that people like speaking to him. You guys like speaking to him.
I was slightly, well, it's not quite the right word, but I was a bit like on edge for the first time, because I've not met him before. I was just a little bit, what is he going to be like?
Yeah.
He can obviously go 100 miles an hour, and he's like good value. So the first one was settling in, but after the Sutton game, he was great. It was just me and him there, and he was brilliantly open. You could see the cogs ticking over. That there are some things I might want to say, but I know the right line to tread to make sure that everything is, as it should be, and we are a team. It's not some one individual having a go at the rest of them. So no, from that point of view, that felt very good, very honest, very sort of straightforward. We weren't sort of batting around cliches with each other. We were having like a nice open conversation about how it went and why it should have gone and how it could have gone better.
That's the other thing with Charlie as well. He is honest. If he doesn't like something, like the famous Southampton interview, he'll come out and say it. He's not one to hide behind anything. He'll come out and he'll tell you what he thinks.
And he's box office as a result of that as well. Yeah. Because he's not just going to give you a mouthful of cliches. I mean, listen, again, like for those of you that are tuning in late, the reason why we're having another Charlie Austin Love-In is Darren's making his show debut today, so we're easing Darren in by talking about the fact that he is childhood friends with our current skipper. And we've all got very different angles around the table. We can't think of a better way to ease Darren in the Tom Broadbent Lounge duties than to do that. But I was just going to close by saying this. I had a really lovely conversation with Charlie this week. Really, really lovely conversation with Charlie this week. And it wasn't about Charlie. It was about Jake Wakeling. And Charlie spoke with such passion and enthusiasm about how chuffed he was for Jake Wakeling. And how Jake Wakeling's goal was all about his hard work, determination, the fact that he's a great kid, the fact that he listens, the fact that he puts it in, the fact that he's hugely popular, and all the rest. But Charlie was just so, and this is just a conversation between two friends as opposed to a conversation where he's ticking boxes. But he was just really, really keen to sort of stress to me, not that he needed to, because I'm a massive Jake Wakeling fanboy, let me tell you. But I thought that just spoke volumes as to, if you wanted a microcosm in terms of capturing, I think, what we've had from Charlie Austin since his return to the club, I think that is it.
Well, I think you even a little bit have noticed that on social media, haven't you? When like a couple of the players have come out and had a bit of a rough time with, after games and so on and so forth. Charlie was just sort of subtly kind of coming on, giving them a bit of a hand. It's like almost like a little bit of a sort of shield for them when they were getting criticism as well. I think it was Jake.
Jake was definitely one of them, and I'm trying to think who else was in this. He's really come out and defended. There's been a couple, isn't it? Who's really stepped forward and said, "Hang on, no, I tell you." So FBT is very keen to tell the world that FBT is someone he'd have in his trench all day long, as indeed I think we all do. Yeah. But look, let's park the Charlie Austin love bus again. Just to reiterate, Darren, you're very, very welcome on the show, mate. It's lovely to have you now as part of the furniture, and it's tremendous that we've been able to open up by talking about your relationship with Charlie from literally primary school through to where we are now. There's lots of people, because it's a funny thing, like being a Londoner, whenever I come to Swindon, it never ceases to amaze me how we've got a city-sized village. And it seems like everybody's got some kind of link, but your link is really quite a kind of special one, childhood one, goes right the way back to when your ages were in your single figures. So thank you for your insights on that, Darren. But we've got the small matter of Harrogate to talk about today, but we've also got Andrew Hawes, as you're looking at my notes over my shoulder. We've got a few things to talk to you about.
All right, go on then.
So we'll spend a couple of minutes just reflecting on Salford. Obviously, you were up there. The pitch was bloody dreadful, wasn't it? I could tell, looking at it, that's probably the worst pitch I've seen. We've seen some shockers in League Two. That was dreadful. Was it
a couple of years ago, probably.
I think that Newport was in class of its own, but that was not good. It made me laugh because I did a video and put it on like the BBC Wiltshire Twitter feed. And the first reply is someone tagging in Gary Neville saying, "This is a disgrace." Can't you sort it out? But no, that was not good. You could see the players struggling with them. So both teams broadly wanted to play, but on the surface.
But how does it get like that? Because that's a club with a lot of backing and a lot of funding.
And there's no
we've always had, arguably, an absolute carpet at the county ground, regardless of who's been in charge and whatnot. How difficult is it to get a pitch that's actually playable? Especially with the funding that they've got.
The strange thing about their ground is as well, this is the thing, I've often spoken to Marcus about the quality of the pitch out here, and Marcus always ends up saying, actually look, we're very open to the elements here, we get a lot of wind, get a lot of rain, get a lot of sunlight, we're very fortunate in that respect, it kind of helps them along the way. Salford's not exactly, the Peninsula Stadium is not exactly a closed-in bowl, so that's the other thing that really
it's a non-league ground.
Yeah, I can't quite explain how it's got to that. Point. I don't think it's been that bad for the previous two games.
Well, you remember when Wembley Stadium was completed and the problems they had with the pitch there? That was all down to things like sunlight, water penetration, again, wind, a problem with getting exposure to the elements. But even they've got on top of it. And now Wembley you couldn't get more of a bowl than Wembley. So, it was the frustrating thing for me, Andrew, going back to last week's game, though, was I knew that there was going to be an injury on that pitch. It was inevitable. Just given how bad we've been so unlucky. We had the development fixture earlier this season against Newport on what was a shocking pitch, and it cost us Matt Bowdery and probably ended Matt Bowdery's career. Some of the lads that I bumped into in the car park said it was truly, truly shocking. Didn't look too bad from the side, but when you were on it, it was terrible. It kind of felt inevitable, and then what a player to lose as well. Arguably player of the season so far, Fraser Blake Tracy. What a player to lose. So it's kind of a bit of a double whammy, is it? We walked away with 3 points, but at the same time, it had a really bitter taste to it.
We're not allowed to enjoy a win because we lose our best defender and we get arguably, I guess, midfield and band to fight.
And it was a win where we won 2-1 with only one shot on target in 90 minutes. That's one of those scrappy wins where you're like, we needed the win, but it doesn't paint over any cracks.
Yeah, for sure.
The problem's still there.
Great goal, right?
Fantastic goal.
Tell me about the goal, Andrew.
Definitely
were you convinced that you sounded amazed on the radio?
I don't think he necessarily meant to put it exactly where he did, but I certainly think
the
the aim was to try and put it on goal.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a cross. I think it was a shot. He's just absolutely managed to place it perfectly. Because the thing is, we're some our kind of positions much towards that penalty area, but we're very low down. So you're not quite sure. You're not quite sure if it's going to bounce in time. You can suddenly see the keepers really like scrambling and got caught out bit by bit. So it was like a bit of surprise. It just went the right side.
Improvised finish.
Yeah,
Wonderful words. Something that you don't associate with Swindon Town strikers of the current era.
But no, I can't say it was like planned to the ninth degree. That's certainly thing to get the credit. Absolutely.
So we'll walk away with 3 points. I mean, so going into this run of games, particularly off the back of 3 defeats, I think I said the next 4 games will feel like 6 pointers. Yeah, I mean, really, today's game has kind of got that level of importance, Andrew. Obviously, you were at the presser. What was your kind of? Did you get the sense that they're all focusing on this as a must-win?
Yeah, I think they've got to try and find a way to win this if they are going to have any impact on the top 7. I mean, to a certain extent, I think Trudy Morris is a bit more long-term. I think it is much more. It's more at the point where it's still about getting his ideas fully across, seeing progress. I think in how they play, as much as winning. And you're right. Last week it was. I think it was vital just to win and just to see out, especially after the kind of the blow of how they let it all slip at Sutton. So you did well on the mental side. You got through a difficult game on an awkward pitch. Perhaps today is, can you press a bit more? Can you start playing higher up the pitch? That kind of thing. So we'll look. Perhaps I would imagine they'll be looking to kind of see those things as well, and just get through with what is the squad again that is stretched.
So you get, whenever a team's lost 3 on the bounce, park in last week's result. Whenever a team's hit 3 defeats on the bounce, and obviously last week's performance wasn't exactly stellar, it's fair to say, but job done. People will always look to kind of try and find reasons as to why what's happening is happening. Ed Brand is the interesting one, and it's probably a hook that fans might like to hang their hat on, their disappointment hat on. Do you think that the circumstances around not being able to get Ed Brand in the dugout, do you think that's having any kind of impact?
I think he's still able to. I've got this very careful. I think he's still able to wield an influence, shall we say, Ed Brand. It doesn't help. Jenny Morris is visibly frustrated about it every time you ask. Some unspoken implication for the club is to play in the Football League. It's been with them. They say it is suggested, I should say, that it's been with them for a fortnight, and the Swindon version is they started the process on with that, and then they put. So it's just got.
The thing is, it's unorthodox, isn't it?
It's got weirdly bogged down, and I must admit, trying to find out why they want to do it that way, no one is really very forthcoming.
Yeah, so. It's easy to inevitably boil conversations like this down to filthy lucre.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact is, you would. I think most Swindon fans, my knee-jerk reaction is, look, money tends to be a big fix for most things. Why can't we write a big cheque? But in fairness to the owner, he's written quite a lot of big cheques. So if there is a way, a little couple of weeks' patience maybe saves us a 6-figure fee, that's got to surely be worth doing.
It's like we spoke about on Wednesday, wasn't it? I myself was quite happy with the idea of having it as a second one, because then we have that thing where if it doesn't go the way we thought it would go, you're not throwing money around willy-nilly. You know, you've got that option, like, okay, he's on loan. See him out to the end of the season. If it didn't go to plan, we don't have to give him a full-blown contract. He's going to be happy because he's still getting paid by Chelsea. We don't know what the percentage is between us and them, who's paying what. But he's earning more if he's still on Chelsea's books as opposed to just being on our books. And I think, what was it they were saying, that he was still, even though he hasn't been on the touchline, he's still been involved in the training sessions and stuff like that?
Wielding an influence, I think, is the word that we use.
I'm sure officially he hasn't been doing it.
Yes, officially he
Let's
hasn't.
make that very clear.
But he's wielding an influence, allegedly. I think the thing is, like, for most football fans, we love certainty and we love the notion of commitment. You know, like just pinning the colours to the mast. And it's interesting. You're talking very pragmatically, Adam, and I think it's right to kind of consider if things aren't working out, that you can part ways and it doesn't necessarily. But I think that's a two-way street, that, because the flip side, of course, is as fans, we want to be able to invest in the confidence in him as a character. Well, we've appointed because we know it's going to work.
Yeah. Well, we don't know if it's a case of Chelsea if it's Chelsea making it difficult for us as well. Because like we were talking about with them losing one of their coaches to Pompey as well, and that was permanent. You got to look at it sort of, do they want to just get another good coach off their books, or do they want to maybe send him out, get some experience, like you said, and then bring him back as a more experienced bloke at the end of it? Who knows?
Maybe they do.
I think I'll pose it this way: would you rather have Tyrese Simpson on loan or as a permanent?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much, Ellis. In a very sage-like delivery, it's just silent. But it's kind of the point, isn't it? At the end of the day, I think what we would like to see is, well, hang on a minute. If we believe enough in him, then surely we need to just pony up and bring him in. But, well, again, you would hope over the next couple of weeks.
Well, now that he's in,
we'll find out a little, ish, isn't he? Well, now he's here. We'll
now he's in. If the results give the ticks in the box, club ain't going to think twice about throwing money in there.
Well, let's hope you're right. Who you got in co-coms today, Andrew?
We've got Anthony Grant.
Anthony Grant again, yes. Second one on the bounce.
Get him a BBC ID badge.
He's a glutton for punishment, the boy, isn't he?
Especially given as he turned up in the away end at Sutton as well.
Oh, he absolutely loves it. He's ran a wide through to his sloggies. Oh, nothing, mate. I'm grinning from ear to ear.
Give him another contract.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think. Do you know what? Do you reckon he might be around for a reason? Well, look, Anthony Grant, we're going to have to come and find you at half time, Andrew. Just stand there, just gushing at him through the window. Gushing at him. Again, you can't betray any confidences, Andrew, but it still surprises me that he's not taken, he must have offers,
Yeah, well, I mean, when I've sort of spoken to him, I don't think I'm giving too much away. I think there has been some National League teams talking to him, but he's also quite a new dad or a dad again, so whether...
Look, Andrew...
Again, you get to that point, so you don't want to have to travel, do you?
So he's not retired then? He's just struggling to find a club?
Yeah.
So I thought he called it quits in his career.
No, he's just without a club. So here's a question then. We had this conversation 2 weeks ago, Andrew, didn't we? We touched on it and we laughed it off as in we're going to put that in the sentimentality bucket. Given the injuries that we've had and some of the suspensions that we've had, particularly now, losing Saidou Khan for 5 weeks, I want a yes or no answer off of each of you. Would you have him back, Louis? Anthony Grant, would you have Anthony Grant back at Swindon Town?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
To cover them, yeah.
Would you, Darren?
No.
No for Darren. Would you, Adam?
Yeah.
Yes for Adam. Would you, Andrew?
I enjoy having him in the commentary box.
Yeah, that's nicely played. So we're going to kind of go yes and no. Ellis, would you have him back?
Yeah.
So I think he's not the player he was when he first came.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
He's sort of feeling the effects of the age now, I think, which is sort of what's going to happen. And League Two is still quite a competitive league. But then in the same breath, what's stopping us having a little look at who else we can sort of snipe up on the free transfers list?
Well, they are, aren't they? This is the trouble. They are. But I think one of the things, and I think, Andrew, I think it came up in the press, didn't it, that a lot of players that they're looking at in the free transfer market, they're starting to understand their free transfers at the moment, or they're available freedom of contract for a reason.
Yeah.
And that could be where they're living or injury and it's the trouble. It's all very well and good bringing free transfers in, but I'm going to wrap up. I just want to add an extra layer into my answer to the yes or no. So my answer is yes, but and I'll caveat that because what I would say is that if you'd asked me before Saidou Khan, I would have probably been a no. But I would think Anthony Grant in the building, even a 40% of what we've had previously as an option off the bench to come on late in games and just basically run a game, just use his nous and gamesmanship through to the end of the season. I think would be a very shrewd move in the absence of Saidou Khan for 5 games. The problem, of course, is one of fitness because just how good would a 60% Anthony Grant that is only 40% of what we had previously be for us? And I would hate for someone like Anthony Grant to come back and look like a liability, given how well regarded he is at our football club. And so, just to be clear, I'll bring him back for more than just sentimentality reasons. But I would be bringing him back thinking he's an option off the bench, essentially. And also someone that can fill in at centre-back as well, as he proved with enormous support in the Richie Wellens season.
It's just about the numbers to cover the injuries and the suspensions, I think.
There you go.
Even if you did bring him back, he's never going to be that first-choice player that he used to be.
Yeah.
I just don't For me, he's got a good reputation and legacy at this football club, and I would hate to see that spoiled in any way.
Yeah.
It was like when we was eyeing up Owen Doyle again, wasn't it? People were talking about Owen Doyle coming back again. You don't want to tarnish what he left behind.
And actually, I think that's why some people were a little bit apprehensive about Charlie coming back.
1,000,000%.
Is he the same player? No, he's not.
But he's a better
is
player.
He going to be
been in the Prem?
Yeah, in theory, yes. But we don't want him to spoil what he's already done at the football club. And there is that age-old saying in football, never go back, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's a dangerous game.
I get the impression with Granty that the acid test for that, I think Anthony Grant would come back to this football club and do it all for free. But hey, that's just my assumption.
Then yeah, I'd have it back.
Right. You know what we need before we forget? Media passes. We need to go and snap on media passes. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but otherwise we're not going to be allowed to penetrate the deeper reaches of our ground and watch a game of football today. As Ellis departs to grab those. Right. So, Andrew, we're getting on to a time where you need to vacate these premises. So, score predictions, line up. How do you think we're going to line up today, Andrew?
I think we're going to start with the back four because I kind of, in a roundabout way, as I tend to do. So I've asked him about kind of Harrison Minter, and he was quite encouraged by him, but says he's got a lot to learn. So I'm not sure you're going to stick with the back five. So I think we'll see an extra midfielder in. Hope was certainly on Thursday that Johnny Williams might be okay.
So you think we're probably going to see Ellis, Tom Clayton, Kieran Brennan, Romeo Hutton across the back?
Yeah.
Midfield three.
Yeah, I must admit I'm a bit stuck just because he's got Hepburn Murphy back again and what
So,
he does to him.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, isn't it?
You've got Wakeling's in a bit of a better place, having scored his goal. So quite how he shuffles it around. We assume Harrogate are going to be the old-fashioned 4-4-2. So
I tell you, a player who did have a twinkle in his eye in the car park and gave me a knowing nod was Tyree Shade. I've already said to him today, I've got a feeling it's going to be his day. Either
very happy
off the bench or not. He did. He was very happy. Now, could it be Tyree Shade? Bearing in mind, Walsall supporters will have you know that Tyree Shade's best football was played as a left wing back. Could it be that we see Tyree Shade played on the left today, possibly as a wing back? But then again, that's got to mean the three at the back, isn't it? Yeah. And he's not going to be playing as a left back, so possibly not.
I'd want him up front as a left wing if you're going to do it. But then, as we were talking before,
left wing of a four.
It's difficult with Charlie in the team, but I'd love to see what Tyrese could do up front, slap bang in the middle, just to see what he can put on. Because he makes the spaces and he's got the pace, and I think he's a good player and he needs more time. But it's going to be hard.
I think we can all safely say that won't happen.
No,
that's the thing. We've certainly got an embarrassment of riches in forward areas, haven't we? This is
it's
trouble.
difficult because we've got so many strikers now. Even Jeffcott is an out-and-out central striker. And, when we were playing him on the wing, you had Wakeling, Austin and Jeffcott on the pitch at the same time. It's difficult because Charlie, you can't just...
But he can't play out wide.
He can't play out wide. He's central players, and the team is all... The attack's almost got to build around him because there's not really anyone at the minute that you would really want to start over Charlie right now.
I know you hate predictions, Andrew, but as usual, we're going to ask you, what do you fancy today?
I think this is going to be a bit closer than people think, because I think, speaking to my compadres at Radio York, it sounds like Harrogate are a bit more determined to try and grind it out now, having changed their defence around. So maybe 1-0, 76, something like that. So hopefully there's enough. But I think we might have to settle in and maybe be a bit frustrated.
So there's a lot of town fans today expecting us to turn up and it's be a cakewalk. It's going to be anything but.
I think my personal sense is going to be more of a struggle, but I thought we beat them yesterday.
Bottom four teams give us a lot of drama sometimes.
I worry about our bench today as well. We're not going to have many options off the bench, so whatever we start with, we're going to have to hope that they're good enough to get the job done.
And again, same point as Wednesday, Harrogate are a big, strong team.
Well,
big players.
You lot keep your powder dry while we let this man disappear off of his mind. Because my notes are screaming, I want to talk about what? We don't necessarily want to talk about Harrogate. We're going to do a deep dive into Harrogate as we say goodbye to Andrew. Andrew, thank you ever so much.
Pleasure.
Give the General a big kiss from us.
I will plant a good solid smacker on it.
Absolutely delightful. Andrew Hawes, the voice of BBC Radio Wiltshire. What an absolute delight. Never has a silky-tongued devil been loved quite as much as Andrew Hawes. Well, listen, okay, I said about we'll do a little deep dive into Harrogate, and Andrew's kind of teed us up nicely there with a bit of an icebreaker. So, Harrogate Town AFC, to give them their full details, they're in a sort of strange kind of, Andrew used the word grinding it out form, and if you certainly glance over the last 6 games, it would suggest that, yeah, grind it out form is the apt take. So they've drawn, won, lost, drawn. Head to head with Swindon Town is we have drawn, won, and lost. And the loss, of course, opening day of the season, as Ellis rejoins us. Party sequence, Tarkwil.
Yeah, thank you.
As Ellis rejoins us, so fair to say, an opening day humiliation for those that made the trip up north. They were very good, I thought. We had a really, really bright opening 20 minutes, and then we've just basically fallen to pieces. But fundamentally, we were thumped. Now, the crazy thing about that thumping in front of 1,948, we'll be hoping for approximately 5 times that audience today, but Sol Bryn took an absolute battering. Just let that sink in for a second. Sol Bryn took an absolute battering. People saying, like, what the bloody... Now, there's a couple of things there. One is it says a lot about a guy that is working really hard to get a contract at the club at the moment in Lewis Ward, and just how popular Ward is amongst the Swindon Town fan base. But 2, it's quite strange, isn't it? Because if FBT is going to be out for the period of time he is, kind of slots Sol Bryn straight into pole position for player of the year, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah, he's been literally the number 1 player that you're going to put on that team sheet.
Louis, can you imagine a world where Sol Bryn is being booed by Swindon fans?
No.
I can't imagine that world. What sort of weird parallel universe?
I can't tell you, that first game of the season with Sol and goal, I can't lie, I sat there and I watched it and I thought, oh my God, we've got another Kovar on our hands.
Amazing.
I really did. Because basically anything that come at him went in. But he's really come into his own since then, and he, like you say, he's been a staple of the team, and you wouldn't think of anyone else to put him between the sticks.
I think he was unfortunate on his debut. It was almost a perfect storm of events that led to him being the scapegoat. Obviously, Lewis Ward, he's been picked over Lewis Ward.
And there was all the discord around, we don't know for a fact, but there was all this chat around, Sol's got to play, because that's the agreement on his loan. And for us, we're like, hold on, so you're telling us we've got this cracking shot stopper, whether you like his work with his feet or any other facet of his goalkeeping. Lewis Ward's a tremendous shot stopper. Yeah. So we're like, we've got this lad here, he can't play because we've got this, like you said, a potential Kovar on our hands. Without meaning to be harsh to Kovar, it's almost like a bit of PTSD amongst the fan base, isn't it? Because Kovar really was throwing them in. And the idea that we would be tied to another Kovar situation, you can understand why Town fans, maybe in hindsight, were a bit nervous.
But what makes me laugh for that Kovar is he's playing quite well now, isn't he? He's had a few good spells, but that bloke would literally just roll it into his net every game, just to sort of wind us up. Sol has come into his own. He's talking about Lewis. He was a very reaction save keeper. You know, that's why he was almost every penalty that come at him. I think he only let in like 2 of God knows how many penalties that came towards him. He even saved a penalty against Jesus. Cracking goalkeeper. Bryn, I think, is much better as a sort of like a sweeper than he is a shot stopper. I think anything that comes at him too quick down the bottom, he struggles to get down to. But
he's got a tendency of punching a lot as well.
Yeah. Or sometimes he just watches it go in a little bit as opposed to giving it a bit of effort. I think the first Gillingham goal was a bit of... He could have probably made an effort to get it and he didn't. But I still think he's a cracking goalkeeper and he's improving week in, week out.
I'm a Peter Schmeichel sat around a table with Gary Neville 1, 2, 3 and 4. Like, I hate listening to people dig out goalkeepers. I really do. Gets my back up. Nonetheless, I think you're all right. But listen, we won't go on too much about Sol, but it's just, the point is, like I said, it seems really strange reflecting on a world where Swindon fans are booing in decent numbers, booing Sol Bryn. And I think we've also worked out that Adam was one of the guys that Mildy clearly came over and had a go at on his home debut. But anyway, by the by. So anyway, Harrogate's recent indifferent form, and it really is in different form, but nonetheless, it's actually, I say that, if you're a Harrogate fan, with maybe a positive twist. They've had really spirited draws against Stevenage, Salford, Crewe, and on Tuesday night against Grimsby. No mugs, in the context of those 4 teams, Grimsby, Crewe, Salford, Stevenage, that's not bad for a team that are basically third from bottom. They've also beaten Carlisle, that's definitely not bad, and their only defeat in that run of games has come against Sutton, 1-0. Now, obviously, you don't need me to tell you that losing against Sutton is no disgrace. They're not a bad side. Interestingly, they do score. Now, I had a conversation with someone earlier whose name should remain unlisted, but he said to me they don't score a lot of goals. Well, that's actually not true. For a team that's third from bottom, they score a lot of goals. They've scored as many as Bradford, who are in 8th, and they've scored more goals than all of the teams in the table, following on from Swindon Town Football Club. So after us, they have outscored every single team in the table below us. The downside for Harrogate, of course, and they've had to make some big changes here. They've got the third worst defensive record in League 2. They've conceded 47 goals. And that's literally matches Dion Conroy's Crawley in the goals against stakes. And Crawley are having an absolute shocker under our erstwhile boss, Scott Lindsay. So we're expecting them to line up in a 4-4-2, but crucially, their defence has improved significantly recently. They've got all four new players at the back. They've got Toby Sims, the right back, who they signed from the minor leagues out in the US. Their right centre back is expected to be O'Connor, who's ex-Morecambe. Tom Eastman, they brought in on loan from Colchester, and Matty Folds they brought in to play left back. They're all expected to make up their back 4. Essentially, completely new back 4 as they've looked to stem the tide. And other new faces to their setup that we're expecting to see today. Centre midfield, we look out for Levi Sutton. And on left midfield, you've got the tricky skills of Kazim Oliigbe, who's on loan from Southampton. Cracking player indeed, yeah. Mainly Southampton's second string, but a really, really decent player. We talked about this guy on Wednesday night. The main goal threat is a guy called Luke Armstrong.
Rate him highly.
Yeah,
Very
well,
good
most of League 1 and 2 absolutely do. And interestingly enough, Luke Armstrong didn't notch against us at the start of the season. But for a team that is third from bottom, he's managed to hit the back of the net 10 times, score 2 assists in 33 appearances, so obviously a goal every 3.3 games. He's had 56 shots, of which 50% of them are on target, so the guy's got a decent enough on-target rate. And he's supported on the right wing by Alex Patterson, who did score against us. He's got 7 goals, including one, as I say, in the opening game of the season, 4 assists and 28 appearances. Another player that scored against us and is expected to play a role today would be Jack Muldoon, with his 4 goals and 4 assists from 30 appearances.
And he scored 2 in the last 3 as well, so he's in a good bit of form, Muldoon.
Ridiculous name, but a good bit of form. Never trust a man called Muldoon. What a ridiculous name, says Hanrahan. And then Matty Daly. He was an unused substitute, scored against us on the opening day of the season, but an unused sub on Tuesday. A little bit out of favour, but he still managed to pipe up 6 goals in 24 appearances, although he's been a little bit apart. So, that's your Harrogate threats, that's your Harrogate runners and riders. Going round the table, gentlemen. Louis, prediction for you?
What, score prediction?
Given everything you've just heard.
I still think 3-1.
3-1?
Yeah.
So Horsey's giving it grinding out, but Louis, you're unfazed by that.
Well, I just am. I just think, I think they will score because we don't have the likes of Blake Tracy, so I think our defence will be a little weak, obviously. But I just think, Morris has a plan. Like, Morris obviously will have seen that Tuesday game because we didn't have one, so he's been able to watch it back. And I think hopefully he's been able to highlight their weaknesses, which we can exploit. By
and large, if we're playing 4 at the back, you would naturally think we're going to have more gaps.
Yeah.
But weirdly, we seem to defend like we're a much tighter unit, it looks to me, with 4 at the back. And yet you haven't got an extra defender in there. It's bonkers, isn't it? So whether that's because people leave certain jobs to other people or they're not taking responsibility, maybe with a back 4, they're all a lot more aware of their responsibilities. They're just a lot more on it because there isn't someone that can mop up their mistakes. I don't know, how do you feel, Dan? What do you think score-wise?
Well, on the winner crate the Thatchers on the town Twitter page, I put 3-0 Swindon. I think it may be a bit tighter than that, actually. But interestingly, this is Harrogate's 5th game in 14 days, so they've had a bit of fixture congestion over the last couple of weeks. Will that have an effect on them? We'll see today, I guess. But yeah, I think we need a good start today. If we can get a good start, maybe get an early goal, it's going to have to open them up, isn't it? Because they'll have to come at us a little bit. I think the longer it stays 0-0, the more difficult it's going to be for us. Like Andrew said earlier, they are in a grind it out situation now, and they will come here and defend, whether it's 4 at the back or 5 at the back. I think they're going to make it difficult for us. But yeah, we've just got to find the quality, and we know we've got the quality up front. So yeah, if we get a good start, I feel confident.
I think, to be fair, I think we've got the quality through the squad. I think we've got a lot of quality technicians. The biggest issue that we've got is we just haven't got any experience. So that's my only concern. I mean, we'll come on to my prediction a little later, but my only concern sits around the fact that technicians versus kind of wiser, grittier, I won't say wiser, but grittier lower league opponents who play the percentages. I'm expecting them to go long. And for me, it's like, well, under just a bombardment, you're asking young technicians to I hate the word man up, but, to toughen up and to wise up. It's a big arse day. But what about you, Adam? Where are you sitting?
Look, as you've got on your notes there, the draws that they've managed to get in their last few games, you look at who that's against.
Yeah.
These are teams that, the confidence isn't there with us this season.
You could see us slotting onto that list, couldn't you?
Yeah. Not even. I could see them beating us. I'm normally quite optimistic, but look, I haven't seen a huge.
Where's your booze now, McMacken? Where's your booze now?
I haven't seen a huge amount this season that has made me confident that we can go and turn teams over. And I've seen a few times this season already that these bottom teams, i.e. Gillingham, are more than good enough to give us a tough game.
I think Gills are the exception, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're sort of our bogey team. But look, you look at all teams.
The money they've thrown around in January.
Yeah,
they signed almost the whole new team.
We always struggle against bottom half teams, no matter how good of a team we are. And I think with the goals to tally that they've got there, the injuries that we've got and the suspensions we've got, and the form that they're coming into, and the fact that they want to break away from that bottom three, I think they'll give us a hard game. I'd like to say we could nick a goal and sort of be like a 1-0, but I'm thinking more of either a 1-1. It's going to be a 1-1 or a 2-2 draw, I think.
1-1 or a 2-2
worst case scenario, they'll nick a late goal.
I think he's bottled it. He was going to go for a defeat, and he knows he's been outed.
The booze have been ringing around here.
No, I told you last home game that I was done after that.
All right, we'll go with that. Don't worry, Adam. We'll go. So you're going for a draw. Ellis?
I'm positive. Look, we got Johnny Esther coming back in. We got Sean Hepburn-Murphy coming back in. Big players, and I think when Hepburn-Murphy got sent off in the Newport game, it changed that game. Do I think he might not start? But imagine you, as a defender, you've got Charlie Austin on the pitch, and you know that Hepburn-Murphy's coming off the bench. It's scary. It's a scary thought. Do I think we will keep a clean sheet? Probably not, especially with Blake Tracy out at the minute. But I think we're going to score a minimum of 3 goals, and I think we're going to see a hat-trick from Hepburn-Murphy.
All right, 3-0. Wow, okay. Well, listen, I mean, I said that last week. I don't want to use the word cakewalk because I thought last home game would be a handsome scoreline, and obviously we all know that Doncaster did the number on us, but I don't know. Listen, I've said 4-0, right? I've said 4-0. There's a little bit of Hannah's hyperbole in that, but I'm going to stick with it just for the sake of look. There's no point filling the air full of waffle and filling Twitter full of letters unless you're going to stick to your convictions. So it's going to be 4-0 Town. I'm going to spice it up by saying Charlie's going to be heavily involved in the assists today, not in the goals.
He'll bag 1, I reckon.
You reckon? All right, well, you're going with a Charlie 1, but I'll tell you what, Jake Wakeling's going to get 2, and Tyree Shade is going to be his day. And I've said, if he comes off the bench, if he's on the bench today, Joe Tomlinson is going to score a free kick. So 4-0, bosh, but I think it's going to be gritty until the second goal goes in around the 70th minute, and then I think the dominoes will fall. And the second will be followed very quickly by a third and a fourth, put it to bed, everyone goes home happy. I'm floating back down the M4. The world's a beautiful place again for another 7 days. Happy as Larry. Now, let's have it. Ellis,
Yeah.
what we got, Adam? What we got? What have you seen?
By that idea
Yeah.
of what you were saying, in terms of a lineup, then we're going to get this 4-0 win that you want.
Yeah.
With how sparse our midfield's looking, why don't we fling in a 4-2-4?
I wouldn't be surprised if
Right.
they did just bypass the midfield.
Austin and Wakeling up front, with Shade, Hepburn, Murphy.
Why not?
Shuffling between the wings
Listen.
and the left mid and right mid.
Tyree Shade had a little twinkle in his eye outside that I've not seen for a while.
4-2-4.
I could be hopelessly misreading it because he's a generally charming man. But, you know, I don't know. There's something about Tyree Shade. Every time I see his shot,
He looks up for it today.
I see Tyree Shade, big smile, and I'm humping his leg like an enthusiastic Labrador. There's something about that man.
Something in the water.
It just makes the man feel good. Is what he does. He makes this man feel good. But no, I've got a feeling there's something in the boil today with him. And I thought, funny enough, before he picks up his injury, I actually thought he was starting to come to the boil for us. So I've got my fingers crossed. But look, we're gonna do our trivia teaser here, and we're gonna do it slightly different, Ellis.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna put a little pause between all three hints, but we're gonna do it in one sitting.
Wow.
So for all you lucky devils listening in, you have got the chance to win a hand-signed Dan Designs print of your choice. Hand-signed by the artist, and if you'd like it to be, we will get it hand-signed by your choice of player. So, a highly desirable piece by our delightful show partner, Dan Designs, Dan the Donny from Donny. So, first clue. I hope you're all listening in. Get your pens and paper ready, and you will answer this, ladies and gents. You will make your guesses via tweet, DM, or you can send us a speaker request. So be on your marks. Ellis, your first clue for our lovely listeners.
Okay, so this player is a 22-year-old Gemini who started his career in the Midlands, but not from Hannah's home city.
No, not mine. His home city.
Oh, not from his. I thought it was from yours.
So he's a 22-year-old Gemini, which would what suggest he's been born in June. Would that be about right? He's 22, born in June, started his career in the Midlands, but not for his home city. Interesting. So read into that what you will. So we'll keep repeating that again for those of you that haven't listened. So wait for your chance to win. And Designs, print of your choosing. Who has played for Town is a 22-year-old, currently 22-year-old Gemini who started his career in the Midlands, but not for his home city. Who might that be? Please do send in your guesses. Tweet. You can DM us.
Make sure it's turned down.
Or you can go for a speaker request. Who are you going to go for? Is anyone going to go for that?
Should we go for the second one?
I think you're going to have to give them another clue, Ellis.
Right. Despite injury, I managed 31 appearances and 3 goals from a range of positions.
Ooh. So we're talking about someone that's had injury issues. 31 appearances they've made, and they've still managed 3 goals. So we've got a bit of a utility player, 31 appearances and 3 goals. Again, dear listener, for your chance to win.
Ah, we've got one.
Oh, and who are we going
Rigby.
for? Ben Rigby is having a guess. Well, all right, Ben Rigby. Your guess has been recorded. Let's give him the third clue.
We might as well.
We might as well.
Okay, St Kitts and Nevis International, and flipping hell, some might say I'm a dodgy character.
A St Kitts and Nevis International and flipping hell. Some might say I'm a dodgy character, a shady character nonetheless.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Ben Rigby, you're correct. Of course you are, Ben Rigby. It is, of course, the man that makes this man happy. The man that casts no shade on my day. It is the wonderful, the one, the only Twinkle Toes himself, Tyree Shade, who is a 22-year-old Gemini. Bit creepy, I know his star sign, you might say. Bit creepy. Who started his career in the Midlands. So, of course, he started his career for Leicester City, as opposed to Birmingham City, which was his home city. So, City of Birmingham, but his career started in Leicester. Despite injury problems this year, he still racks up a really impressive 31 appearances, scored 3 goals, one of the most bizarre goals that we've seen at the ground since what's his name? Nearly said. No,
Norman Dotwell's banging it in his own net.
No. Oh, for goodness sake. Who was it stumbled over the ball and sent it in at the other end, and then now he plays in Poland? Help me, the young kid.
Oh,
Romanski.
Yeah, that's it.
Romanski, there we are. So Joe Romanski. So anyway, I digress. And of course, represented St Kitts and Nevis at youth level, has a delightful line in flips. And the Caribbean island of St Kitts and Nevis does a lovely backflip, although we're all kind of in agreement that Tyrese needs to work on his landings. But some might say he's a dodgy character. Of course, another word for a dodgy character, a shady character. A shady character indeed. So there you are. So congratulations, Ben Rigby. You are this week's winner. Send us a DM, Ben, with your print of choice. Go on to Dan Designs, our wonderful show partner. Go on to Dan's website, pick your print of choice, and we will make sure that you get a special edition signed by the artist and signed by your player of choice, if you so wish. Let us know if you want that. We won't ruin your good print by getting someone to attack it with a Sharpie if you don't. Well, listen, I mean, apart from all the stuff that we talked about on the show, and it has been a packed show, obviously we opened up by talking about Darren and his childhood experiences growing up with our current skipper, Charlie Austin, the wonderful Andrew Hawes, and we've gone through all the news and views from the county ground this week. We've been through our predictions and whatnot. I don't like to keep talking for the sake of it, contrary to what you might believe. So, I think we're going to draw a line under our show this week, because in 15 minutes' time, it gives you just enough time to go and get yourself a cup of tea, open a bottle of beer, make yourself a sandwich, settle down, whatever you got to do. But preferably, if you're in the Swindon area, you've got an hour and 15 to get off your ass and get down to the county ground. Legends Lounge is filling up nicely, it's good to say. And all being well, get yourself down here, get yourself a ticket, hopefully enjoy a nice afternoon of football at the county ground. So, competition winner Ben Rigby, we'd like to hear from you. The rest of this wonderful support that's in our ground today, we'd like to hear from you non-stop during the game today. Darren, congratulations, your show debut under your belt. How does it feel?
Marvellous. It's been an absolute pleasure, Hannahs. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, it's an absolute treat. Don't be a stranger. Louis, always a delight to have you in the mix.
So thank
you for coming along.
Thank you for letting me
Better
on.
late than never, Louis. What was your excuses today?
Oh, traffic. It's
Traffic.
awful. It's
Always
traffic.
traffic.
Always traffic.
Always traffic.
It's roadworks o'clock, isn't it, today? Roadworks o'clock. Ellis, thank you, mate. Again, as always, an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure
And
to be here.
Adam, we're just wrapping up. Thanks to you as well.
Live show
your
debut.
live show debut, how was that for you?
Yeah, it was great.
As
Medium
you-
pass and a few points. You can't go wrong, can you?
Performing in front of your adoring crowd. Look at them. Is it any different to sitting at home in your pants, talking on a Wednesday night till midnight?
I'll be lucky to have my pants on at midnight. Yeah, apart from the fact none of them are looking at me. Yeah, no, it's been quite good.
Oh, they're all looking. They're just pretending they're not. They're just pretending they're not.
That's the most important thing.
They're all paying attention. That's
all
it.
listening.
That we're in their ears. It's been our absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you for joining us. It's been a brilliant, fun show. We're going to hand over to our friends at BBC Radio Wiltshire, going to be kicking off their coverage. Andrew Hawes and the General Anthony Grant from 2 o'clock. So tune in to the guys from then. I'm off to get a Guinness.